Loyalty's Price, the Psyker short story, by Victoria Hayward, performed by Rod VL. Echo was watching a battle unfold. Astra Militarum's soldiers in grey drab charged onto a killing field as the corrupted cultists roared towards them in a hideous tide of bile and bone. Echo frowned. The image was patchy, dragged as it was from an unwilling mind. He willed the interrogatee to focus, but she was paralyzed with fear as the battle scene replayed. The memory juddered, and the faces of the other weird-veined psychers she had been deployed with came into focus. A combat coven of Scholastica Psycana rejects, too powerful to terminate, but too insane or uncontrolled for other service. Some were catatonic, unaware of the descending hordes, and others were caged, howling with terror. All were watched warily by a stony-faced commissar, her pistol trained not on the attackers, but on the psychers. Inside the memory, Echo saw the interrogatee look down at her hands, pale and shaking. Strands of energy crackled around her fingers as a chant started up amongst the more lucid weird veins. He felt a static vibration and smelt a metallic burn as the weird veins reached for one another's minds, and their powers began to harmonize. The enemy hordes grew closer, and the interrogatee moaned in pain, her body sparking with dangerous warp energies. The commissar called a warning as the air pressure changed. Echo focused. This had to be it. They'd finally see what happened. Then, the memory shattered, and the battle scene split into fragments. "That's enough," came a brusque voice. Echo pulled off his blindfold and blinked, dazzled by the brightness of the interrogation chamber. He was back on Atoma, not that he had really ever left. His master, Explicator Zola, had her hands clasped behind her back, expression stern. Frost bloomed on the table on which the interrogatee was strapped, indicating dangerous levels of psyker activity, and the candles around a small shrine to the Emperor had guttered out. "Did you progress any further?" Zola asked. "No, Lord," Echo said. "She resists." His head ached from the hours of interrogation. Zola's lips curled as she addressed the weird-veined interrogatee. "You've been given an opportunity to serve the Imperium despite your abnormality, and this is how you reward us. We lost an entire company in the attack on Nox Alpha, and yet you survive. Why?" She yanked the woman's head up by the hair to glower at her. "What are you hiding? Are you in league with the cultists?" Disgusted, the explicator dropped the woman's head back down onto the metal table. "You fled Atoma thinking you could escape. But there are no safe harbors in Tertium Hive, or any Mobian domain for a traitor witch." Echo watched as the weird vein sobbed silently, her face a rictus of fear. He learned a long time ago to remain impassive. An unsteady psyker was a dead psyker. Zola breathed heavily. "And," she added, "we lost an interrogator in the attack. Someone will pay for that." Now her fury during the interrogation made sense. An instrument of the Holy Ordos she might be, but in Echo's estimation, Zola had always been the most humane of Grendel's retinue. "Sir," Echo said, "if I may." Zola waved a hand. "Please," Echo said softly to the weird vein. "My lord only wishes to know the truth. She's fair to our kind, else I wouldn't be in her service. Please, just tell her what happened." The weird vein swallowed, her lips cracked and pale. "Shall we try again?" She nodded. The familiar battle scene rushed past, but they didn't stop as they had before. The memory continued as the weird veins unleashed their attack. Echo felt their power scream out in vast arcing bolts of lightning, crackling violently into the ranks of the heretics, leaving charred corpses in their wake. Traitor tanks ruptured, howling shards of metal skyward. The cultists faltered, and the weird veins intensified their attack. Echo felt their elation at their victory, but it was only momentary. They overreached. They were only as strong as their weakest number, and one of the caged Psykers had begun to shudder at an unnatural speed. The others began to scream and bleed from their mouths. Then, with a hideous crump of organic matter, the skulls of those closest started imploding. The Commissar was just as efficient and lethal as her rank demanded, but she only terminated about half a dozen of the beleaguered Psykers before a ripple of malevolent energy hit her, and her head inverted with a wet crack. The caged Psyker screamed, jaw wrenched open unnaturally, smoke rolling out from his eyeballs in greasy coils, and Echo watched in horror. Echo knew, as well as the weird vein whose memory he rode, exactly what was happening. From the moment the black ships took young Psykers from their families, the dangers were drilled into them. When they reached into the Immaterium to draw on its power, Psykers not only became vital tools for the Imperium, but conduits through which the nightmare horrors of the warp could stream. Normally, the Commissar's pistol would end any instability before it took hold, but something terrible was about to happen here. Ice formed around the interrogatee's feet. Echo saw her raise a trembling hand towards the stricken Psyker, pulling down on whatever reserves of energy she still had. In the corner of the memory, he saw the interrogator running towards them, but knew he would be too late. The air around the caged Psyker shimmered, boiling blood flowing from his nose and ears. Screaming with effort, the interrogatee threw a crackling blast of power towards the stricken comrade. The explosion ruptured the battlefield, throwing the interrogatee to the ground. The memory faded into darkness, and the scorch filled Echo's nostrils. Echo pulled his blindfold off. "Well," Zola snapped.
"There was going to be a breach,"
Echo said.
"She terminated the corrupted Psyker before it happened. Regretfully, the interrogator was too close to the blast to survive. So, she acted in good faith and hid her actions from us through fear."
Zola nodded, looking down at the interrogatee, tears of blood streaming down the exhausted Weirdvane's face. The interrogation process was not gentle, although Echo always tried to reduce the hurt.
"Then she shall have mercy."
Echo breathed a sigh of relief.
"The Emperor's mercy."
The explicator said, drawing her pistol and firing 2 rounds directly into the woman's skull. Echo froze in shock as the woman's body went limp.
"A waste,"
the explicator said grimly.
"But there is no coming back from the exposure to a corrupted element. Termination is the only way."
Echo stared blankly.
"This must be difficult for you,"
Zola said.
"But fear not. Should your abnormality ever threaten your ability to serve him, on Terra, I'll not hesitate to end your suffering. Isn't that a comfort?" "Yes, Lord." "Thank you, Lord,"
Echo replied tonelessly. Shame and fear incised on his heart. The explicator nodded as she left the chamber.
"Only in death does duty end. Remember that."
Echo glanced back at the Weirdvane's body as he followed her out.
"I won't forget, Lord."